Hey everybody, welcome back. It's Jennifer J. I am so sorry. I thought that I had Thursday's recording done and loaded, and I'm trying to get back on track, and I promised you guys I would get back on track, and I don't know what happened, but it's not there. So I am doing a quick one on Friday afternoon during my lunch break, just to kind of get caught up, and then I will get Mondays and Thursdays next week on time. You guys pray for me. I'm trying to get back on track. So I just real quick wanted to go over what was happening the beginning of June. I'm not sure if I told you guys this story, but I had somebody on a Facebook group. I asked a question, and it was on one of those, the city of, this one happened to be the city of Gardner, which is the town I'm from in Kansas. And so it was a Facebook group, and I asked a question to see who could help me. And this woman I didn't know answered me, and we got to private messaging, direct messaging. And we were talking, and I ended up asking her where she goes to church, and I ended up sending her the link to this channel. Well, she messaged me back, and she said, she had watched From Better to Better. I think it was number 9, episode 9, I think. I think it was called part 9 at that time. Anyway, she realized she hadn't been living how God wanted her to, and I showed her talked her through how to get to the very first video and watch them in order. And so she did, and she messaged me back, and she gave me this whole story about what God was doing in her life like 4 years ago, and how what I did impressed and tied into what was happening there. So she had been walked away from God for a little while, hadn't really been living for him or communing with him or anything like that. And because she was watching this, God has blessed her. God has blessed the channel, and I just want you all to celebrate and glorify God, not me. This is, I'm only doing this because he told me to, and I'm not very good at it. But he's using it because she said she's going to dust off her Bible. She's going to get out her journal. She signed up for a ministry team at church. She's very excited about because she quilts. And she's even shared the channel with a friend. So it just blessed my heart in June when I heard that, and I'm sharing it with you because I'm hoping it will bless yours as well. And then that night, I really wanted to relax and watch some television. I don't watch much television lately. And I thought I'm just going to relax and turn on some Netflix. Do you know, I couldn't think of one single thing I wanted to watch. I have lots of different shows that I'm in the middle of. Orange is the New Black, which I really like. And Grey's Anatomy, season 17, I haven't seen. All American, the new season came out, haven't seen it. Virgin River, new season came out, haven't seen it. Call the Midwife, new season came out, haven't seen it. Lots of them. I have lots of them, you guys, and there's lots of movies that are on there that I want to watch. But do you know, all I wanted to do that night was watch a sermon. Like, I was just like, none of this sounds good. I want to watch a sermon. So I did. So I turned on T.D. Jakes' Divine Intervention, and it was recorded June 1st. And he went over Luke 24, verses 18 through 32. And I don't know, I have like 4 pages of notes. I know I go nuts on his, but his sermons, in my defense, his sermons are like 2 hours long. So I'm going to go over, though, some of the things I pulled out from the beginning of it. So when Jesus was walking, this is after the resurrection, okay? Jesus has hung on the cross, was buried, rose again, and now he's appearing to his disciples. Excuse me. So he's walking with the disciples, and they don't recognize him. And they ask him, because he says, what are y'all talking about? And they're like, what, are you a stranger here? Haven't you heard all this stuff? Because, you know, everybody's talking about it. But they can't discern that the person they're talking to is Jesus. And what he pulled out of this, we can't discern things without God's help. We can't know the will of God without God's help. And so he said, beginning at Moses, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to back up for a minute. He suggested a Bible study on discernment, which is a good idea. But we need God to intervene in order to discern when we're in the presence of God. You may have read the Bible verse that talks about to entertain strangers, because you never know when you're entertaining angels and you're unaware of it. So be kind to everyone, because you don't know who you're talking to. And that's what this made me think of, because we can't discern when we're in the presence of angels either, but we can't discern when we're in the presence of God unless God intervenes and tells us. And he didn't show himself alive to people that didn't believe in him. He showed himself alive to his disciples and to people who did believe in him, and even they couldn't discern who he was, not without God's help. So the secret of the Lord is with those who love him, and God will show himself strong in a unique way, which he's definitely done for me, and which he did for my friend, my new friend, on that Facebook chat. So he says, excuse my yawning, you guys. He says Job had a relationship with God. He didn't have a relationship with the Bible. First of all, remember Job is Old Testament, so he didn't even have the New Testament, but also they had scrolls back then. They didn't have printing presses, so everybody didn't have a Bible. But Job didn't have a relationship with the Bible, or with a preacher, or with a church, or with his experiences. Job had a relationship with God. And that's important, so important. So it's important that you have a relationship with God, not just I go to church and I have church friends and I'm involved in ministry at church and we could do good things and I have all these places where I was faithful that I can tell you about all my experiences with God. That's all great, but it's not enough. You have to have a relationship with God, and that needs to be on the daily. So every day, set a reminder, make a commitment to it. If you really believe that there's nothing more important than God, then you'll make time for God. Because our priorities, our actions speak louder than words, right? So we know if God is the priority, we're going to take time to spend with him. So I just realized I didn't set my timer. So I don't even know how long I've gone. You know what? Why don't I set it real fast for 5 more minutes, because I don't know where I'm at. And then I'll stop, I promise. So at Pentecost, God sent the Holy Spirit, and Jesus showed himself for 40 days. So that they would be fully persuaded that he was real. So he walked with them and talked with them and showed himself to them for 40 days after his after his resurrection and before his ascension. And he said, he put you in a situation that nobody can get you out of but him. And isn't that the truth? I am in several situations actually right now that there is no getting out except for him. And I'm fully persuaded that he is able and he can do it. So some things God shows you, you can't tell anybody. And I thought that was interesting, because there's been some things that he's told me along this journey that he has told me not to tell anybody. And so when Bishop Jake said that, I just went, yeah, that's been a thing for me. So that was really enlightening to me that he said that. He said some things are secrets. And, you know, there were times in the Bible where Jesus healed people and he told them, don't tell anybody. And usually they did anyway. But there were times he said, don't tell anybody. And that's the example that T.D. Jakes used, was healings. And I just thought that was really interesting. So he has risen, but he hasn't ascended yet. And he's only doing house calls. So there was no more miracles. All he's doing is showing himself to the disciples. He's not going around healing people, preaching the gospel, any of that. All he's doing is showing himself to his disciples. And in Genesis 7:4, there was 40 days and 40 nights. There's a lot of symbolism with 40. In Genesis chapter 7, verse 17, it was 40 days. It rose above what other people were drowning in, the water. Noah rose above what other people were drowning in. That's a whole other sermon. Exodus 4:22, Israel is the firstborn son and Jesus is the only begotten son. God acknowledges you when you are in chains, and he will fight for his relationship with you. Exodus 14:16, Moses was on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights. 1 Kings 19:8, Elijah, 40 days and nights that he went in that food in the strength of the Lord. Luke 4:1 and 2, Jesus was 40 days and nights in the wilderness. Mark 1:13, 40 days with wild animals and angels ministered to him. He said he can do it even with wild animals. If you read that story, that is really interesting. I remember when I listened to the sermon and T.D. Jakes said something about the wild animals serving him, and I was like, I don't remember that. And, you know, I always fact check my sermons. I don't want anybody twisting something up on me unaware, or, you know, just, I always fact check my sermons. And when he said that, I went, I'm not sure I've really read that like that before. So I went back and read it, and I was just astounded. I was just like, that is so cool. I love it when God brings out new messages from a word that I've read over and over and over again and just never saw. So you might want to go back and read that. I am going to stop now because I am out of time. I've got 2 more pages in this sermon series. But again, I want to apologize for not getting these done on time. I will try so hard to do better. I thought I was on track. Today, I want you to remember that Jesus shows himself to his believers. So get in the Word, stay in the Word, be in prayer, be in worship, count your blessings, and he will show himself to you. Pray for wisdom, pray for discernment. He will help you with those things, I promise. And while you do that, if you also want to share this channel with a friend who might be struggling with something or just would be interested in it, that would be awesome. I know that it is blessing people in ways I would never have imagined, and God's going to use it for his glory. So I hope that you'll do that. And in the meantime, I will see you again on Monday. Fingers crossed I don't forget. Thanks. Bye-bye, you guys.